Dr. for opportunity presenting at very prestigious, that too on World Diabetes. You all know the theme, which is access diabetes. What I would be presenting on is one way in which we improve access to diabetes. It's world's first and only biosimilar and gene. Matter of pride is that in the world, this is the first time it has happened by an Indian company. Now I know you may be wondering how come I'm using brand name RSS. Doing that is actually one. Is, if I just say biosimilar gene, there are many. One which is and will remain so by 20, at least for 1 year, the US FDA. No other biosimilar gene name into. Second is report adverse events biosimilars. You need to report by brand name. That's important. And even the international non-proprietary name, not just biosimilar insulin gene, you have to put a 4-letter suffix like YFGN, which distinguishes that this is Basilog and not any biosimilar. And the third reason is obviously the data that led to this come on slide 1 in slide 3. We are also doing an in slide 4 kind of study in India on type 2 diabetes. On this slide, all that I wanted to say, and all doctors know about this, just as you have a small chemical original, when it loses patent, a generic can come in. The biologic, when it loses patent, a biosimilar come in. But biosimilarity does not mean interchangeable. You need to do separate studies to prove biosimilarity, separate study to prove interchangeability. And therefore, this article which Shashank actually wrote years ago, 2009, so 12 years ago in JAPI, it's an interesting article where he's actually asking this question, that when you look at biosimilar insulins, are they really similar? Obviously, there must be a complicated process by which a biosimilar eventually gets approved. And it's not the same as a generic. For a generic, it's much simpler. That's why the price differential between an original small chemical and the generic is. But with a biologic and a biosimilar, the price differential is not that much. That company which has to come out with a biosimilar has to do quite a lot. Not the same as the biologic and therefore some price difference, but they still have to do quite a lot. And the third bullet point is just an acronym, time. Know that with diabetes, it's all about time, and time can be expanded to mean the importance of being metabolically early, because by the time we diagnose itself, the patient may have lost up to 50% beta cell. That's why I have actually used the symbol beta rather than, because that's extremely important, and therefore you need to be early, because we are anyway late. Even with insulin, can we as early as possible? Because, and I've heard this many times with Dr. V, that when the patient comes in with an HbA 9%, initially, and insulinization may help because it reduces the glucose-hypotoxicity, and that beta cell, which becomes a little stunned, hopefully can come back before permanent, I would say, irreversible. Some way in which a function can come back towards. All know the differences, so I won't labor the point, but the fact is biologics are more complex, larger molecules, not like these. Therefore, you can't really have to give parenterally. More important than that, the source, that living cell, obviously the innovator is not going to share that proprietary knowledge, so the biosimilar manufacturer come up with their own process. Ultimately, the process is, when you get that product, you have to show that it is similar. Now you might wonder, why can't I say? Well, it's like this. The amino acid sequence is identical. But in that process, there would be these post-translational modifications. like phosphorylation, glycosylation, sialylation, acetylation, amidation, because of which biosimilar terminology, biosimilar is never bio, but for all practical purposes, as long as there are no clinically significant efficacy, safety, how I remember it, the next conference of efficacy, safety, as long as there are clinically significant for all practical purposes. So this I got from a slide that Dr. An. What is a biosimilar insulin? Really, it is a biological drug similar to an existing insulin, but cannot be considered an exact copy of the original branded insulin because of different manufacturing. And since these are produced living cells or organisms using biotechnology, and I'll talk a little bit about it, they will show more variability. And that is why this batch-to-batch variability is important. Of course, it is also important the biologic, but also biosimilar. And this is, what are they not? Bio better, like to, but see, it's like this. When I compare a biosimilar with biologics, sometimes even though the design is non-inferior, who knows, I may actually get that biosimilar superior to the biologic. It has happened in 1 or 2 cases. But in such cases, that new, biosimilar is considered a new biological entity. Means it has now to go through the entire rigmarole of being approved as a biologic. That is a bio-better. Biosimilar can never be bio-better. But look at the second one. This is important. Bio-mimic or bio-copy. Some countries like the European Union, US, they call them non-similar, non-regulated, intended copy. What do they mean by that? That you have not been able to show that your biosimilar is actually similar. Because I'll show you the process and then you'll realize the similarity begins right in the beginning. That means the chemistry manufacturing control, CMC. Right from the process quality, the manufacturing specification. You cannot show similarity. Beyond that, you can't even go. So if you just do, I'll show you in the slide, and then you will realize that that clinical study done to compare the biologic, just one study, but that also needs to be adequately powered. Sample size needs. This is that slide. If you look now how a biologic is approved, the major chunk of this pyramid is the one at the top, which is the clinical data, right? It starts with CMC, goes on to animal, then PKPD, pharmacology, then clinical. But look at the biosimilar, just the inverted, where the base itself is CMC. If you cannot show that they are similar at that CMC level, beyond that, you can't even. But unfortunately, in some countries, the rigor of approval is not as. Now, when you look at that clinical study, great, it's only in one indication, like the one which is most sensitive endpoint. But imagine now if I were to just compare 100 people, I may not be able to pick out any difference. Ultimately, my conclusion would be that they are equivalent because they are not different. Let's try and understand how these studies are done. The typical study is, I want to show drug A is better than drug B. What is my null hypothesis? That there is no difference between them. And then I do a study to test that hypothesis. And if I find that difference to be statistically and clinically significant, I reject the null hypothesis and say that there is a difference. Drug A is better than drug B or whatever. But when I do equivalent studies, it's just the opposite. The null hypothesis is there is a difference between the two. And now I do the study to test that null hypothesis. And if I do not find any difference, I'll reject the null hypothesis and have to conclude that there is no difference between them. It means they are equivalent. That means drug A is neither superior nor inferior. They are equivalent. Now for both designs, you need sample size calculated, not just because obviously in 100, I may not find a difference. If I conclude that there is. But from a physician's perspective, what will the physician look at? So obviously, all of you all will look at medication. Safety is important in immunogenicity. Then bioequivalence, efficacy, and also economic impact. Because even if the difference is 100 rupees, it's 100 rupees per day for the rest of that patient's life. Now, naturally, if you have a company like Biocon, Biologics, science, scale, the scope, technology, and years of patient experience, more than 2 billion doses, approximately 730 million patient experience, more than 50 years of management, and one of the largest insulin suppliers by volume. At recombinant human insulin, 43 countries, and international trials, international, because these markets are very tough in the sense, among biosimilars, the toughest is actually the European medicines evaluation, and then the US. The first to come out with guidelines way back in 2005. If you look at insulin glargine, again, 8 countries. And of course, all these global trials and all well calculated. Phase 3 in type 1 diabetes patients, 550, that's your type 1. Global phase type 2, that's 560 patients, type 2. Studies, Japanese studies are those euglycemic hyperinsulinemic clamps. To that extent, people have gone and given you the data based on which you've got international out here, the US FDA, EMA, also that is Australia. And of course, this is something which is important, that it's not that Basilog is the brand name everywhere. Semglee, for example, is the brand name for Basilog in the US when marketed by a company called Viatris. Otherwise, Basilog and Semglee, same. In STRIDE 1, a non-inferiority study, compare the efficacy and safety of Biocon's insulin glargine with reference in type 1. I'm not getting into the details of this. This study actually proved biosimilarity. When I say biosimilarity, I mean this product is similar to or comparable to. That means if you have a patient and you believe you need to put that patient on basal glargine, you have choices. One is Lantus. Second is that study in type 1, and then I'll show you type 2. Basically, it's trying to show that it is biosimilar. This is 558 patients. Similarly, type 2 patients, that's called INSTRIDE 2, again, non-inferiority. But again, both these studies, what we are trying to do is parallel group design, and you're looking at efficacy, safety, immunogenicity, and as long as there are no clinically significant differences, all three parameters, the biosimilar to equivalent original biology. But let's look at INSTRIDE 3, because that is the study which really was the basis for getting interchangeable. That's why for this study, I'm going to actually talk a little more, especially from a design perspective. And it's interesting that you have people who are on, say, Lantus plus, and then you randomize them into two arms. One arm, they continue on Lantus, but in the other arm, for the first 12 weeks, they are actually switched from Lantus to Basilog for 12 weeks. After 12 weeks, they are switched back to Lantus, Lantus plus Lisp. And then for the next 12 weeks, again they go back, Basilog plus. Have so many different switches or sequences, and that's important because in the same study, you have a parallel group comparison, but in that arm where you first switch them from Lantus to Basilog, back to Lantus, back to Basilog, you also have a comparison within that same patient. The patient own control rather than just parallel group. That is more, that's the reason here sample size required is smaller as compared to what earlier in slide 1. Naturally, patient is take care of whatever variability you may see. Compare two different parallels. That's the beauty for week 30. Time point, overall incidence. and demonstrate reference safely. That is why the US approved, and it is this time Alimu company, Biocon, Indian company. And another important aspect of this basic, if I put it, substance, drug substance. Typically, all of us on the problems at the border, but here it is made in India. Drug substance, drug product made in India, world class. US FDA, EMA, major market, goes by major market. US FDA, EMA, and PMDA, Canada, these are the major markets. Of course, UK. That is why proved, but proved. Innit Woodcock, now the acting, normally she's not so exclusive about it, but here she's actually so happy that his approval of first in biosimilar furthers a long-standing that support a competitive market, biological patient here may spend 3 hours with his, but 8,757 hours with himself. So actually the patient also needs power to control and let diabetes. Like saying, I let diabetes. Why should I let that? I cannot. Patient problem. Of course, there are acquisition costs, price, safety. Have to manage that safety. Efficacious. If it is not well, not as effective as it should be, if the patient is not controlled, complicated. Cost of complications is the biggest chunk of the. More people will be able to access. So rather affordable, I like to use accessible. What word is about, and even World Diabetes Day, the theme is all about access diabetes. Of course, in terms of saying that actually calculate 48 more economic from a, how do I put it, drug cost of price perspective, look at the overall cost of managing. They will definitely. So when a patent expires, let us take it in stride and some good from far from things that look alike at low resolution, less similar, analytical sensitivity. So the most important aspect of a biosimilar to a biologic has to be that beginning, CMC, chemistry, manufacturing controls, analytical, characterization. It's literally like a fingerprint. That is modules. Biocon, leading player in made in India, I would say for India and self. Biocon developed India's first permanent human way back in 2004. In this pandemic, you can imagine what could have happened if those diabetics, that it's bidirectional, not well controlled. Asterisk, Biocon has provided 2.7 billion doses of diabetes across the globe. Intensive portfolio. Mission is to have 1 in 5 insulin people access Biocon Biologics world-class affordability. Biocon is space focused, affordability, expanding universal access to across. Thank you very much. I hope I have not gone beyond my scheduled time of 15 minutes. And now, in fact, I know you all are all here waiting to hear announcement of a particular launch of a partnership. And for that, I would like to invite Dr. Vasant Kumar, who is our president of RSSDI, Dr. Agarwal, the secretary of RSSDI, Rij Makkar, who is the president-elect of RSSDI, Dr. Banshi Sabu, immediate past president of RSSDI, to join Kiran in talking about this partnership between RSSDI and Biocon. I invite Dr. Vasant Kumar to maybe begin, then doctors can talk about partnership. Have Kiran her views.
Good morning, members. I know there are many of our colleagues who have logged in from across the country. Wonderful feeling today on the final day of RSDI 2021. We are launching this very, very useful and important program, which is meant for the children who have type 1 diabetes. As you know, which is a huge issue, especially if a child happens to be from a poor socio-economic background. And thanks to our colleague, Dr. Bansi Sabu, who envisaged this idea and has put it into reality, which is really going to become fact and reality from today. We are extremely thankful to Biocon, Kiran Majumdar, all our team for coming forward, take up this huge humanitarian task, going to help thousands of diabetic children. We shouldn't say diabetic, we should say children who have type 1 diabetes. We know it's a universal problem, especially developing in an underdeveloped part of this country. We have a lot of children suffer from. I was just telling Kiranji to some of your colleagues that I'm one of those doctors who have been using Biocon since for the last 20 years, especially for these type of children, because I could find them high quality insulin, lesser price. I was also telling many of my colleagues also may not know that Biocon was one of the companies which started giving 100 IU insulin, even almost 1.5 decades back, which was very important for me to use my children who are malnourished, who hardly have any subcutaneous tissue, and I need to inject them a lot of dose of insulin. So it really helped me. So we are extremely happy today that you are with us in this journey to help. You will be the right person, your company will be the right one to take this forward. And it is my colleague, Dr. Bansi Sabu and Dr. Sanjay, who actually made this possible. We are really excited today. You know, any amount of time will not be sufficient to talk about type 1 diabetes, especially when it affects the poor children. All over the world, in fact, we should even probably, a big company with a lot of vision like Kiran Majumdarji forward, even beyond India, maybe. I'm sure you have the capacity, you have the willingness, and you have the attitude to do this. We are really looking forward to work with you in the area. I must again thank my colleague, Dr. Bansi Sabu, Dr. Sanjay for making it possible. I would request all our members, friends, doctors, I know, let us also concentrate on type 1 diabetes. In India, type 1 diabetes need not be managed by a specialist. We all should get equipped and be ready mentally and physically to manage these children, give them a better life, longer life. So we are here from RSSDI to take up this huge task, along with a lot of other things, whether the awareness, prevention, early detection. Some great work has been going on for the last 2 years. We will continue to do. Kiranji, we are looking forward. We would be rather on board with you to do this great job. Thank you all. Secretary Program.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vas. That just shows the leadership very strong at the RSS. And one strong president passed on the baton to the next president, who's equally committed to the cause of diabetes in the country. And then it's going to pass on who's, so you can see there's a whole pipeline of leaders available. And I can assure you that our, our entire endeavor has been that we bring best diabetes country. Times are changing, world is changing. Our concepts, our collaboration, our need to work together is all that we realize. Need to partner with people to help to bring healthcare to our patients. Affordability, availability always are, the most important agenda, right? We want to see that no child dies lack of where Dr. Bansi and I started Type 1 project. We're very happy that you have been on board with us. We look forward to our partnership ahead. We want to congratulate you on this concept of a lot of confidence in your product, as well as the fact that you got I think you were the first company to bring out biosimilar and that you bring affordable insulin. And that I would like to congratulate your vision. And would like to see good for the concept of interchangeability was the concept that your product on par with that's change. And I think people across the country, doctors across the country, we look forward to look forward to work with you. It's going to be a golden jubilee year of RSS, and I'm sure Dr. Bansi as a leadership roll out number of projects, and we would that Biocon is all. Thank you very much, and we. So, over to. It gives me a proud privilege to introduce our guest. Yeah, okay. Dr. Kiran Mujumdar Shaw. She's a pioneer biotech entrepreneur, healthcare visionary, global influence, and a passion. Under her stewardship, Biocon has emerging global launched India's first indigenously insulin in 2004, achieved the world's first interchangeable from US FDA biosimilar insulin. Aspire to have 1 in 5 insulin dependent have access to Biocon biologics quality, affordable biosimilar. She's been a very luminary in the landscape of our country and has been given high level of awards. She's a Padma Bhushan also. Yes, and she the recipient of EY World Entrepreneur of the Year 20 and the EY Entrepreneur of the Year Award 20. Recipient of Order of Australia 2020, Knight of the National Order of French Legion Honor 20, recipient of Othma Gold Medal 20. And she has been on the leadership role as Vice Chair of US India Business Council, member of the board Massachusetts Institute of Technology, member of the board Pure Tech Health USA, member of board Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center USA. We always hear her on various forums on TV, and she's a very strong voice for good practice. So we look forward to listen from you, Dr. Kiran. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Agarwal. Thank you also, Dr. I would like to, of course, address Dr. Rich Makkar and, of course, past President. First and foremost, I want to say that it is a great, great pleasure and an honor to be part of RSSDI Summit at the occasion of World Diabetes Day, which, as you know, commemorates birthday of Sir Frederick Banting, covered insulin with Charles Best. You know, even after a century of its discovery, other key diabetes care unfortunately remain beyond the reach of many who need them worldwide. And despite the universal availability of insulin in the last 20 years, this therapy is yet to be universal. Now, what is important for me to mention here is that we focusing on vaccine inequity in the world. So that's what the COVID crisis has got us to talk about. So it's all about vaccine equity. But you know, on the occasion of World Diabetes Day, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan actually talked about the fact 1 in 2 people in the world who actually doesn't have. So I really believe that this is something that ought to address, and that's what Biocon is addressing. Providing universal accessibility, affordability. That's our mission at Biocon. I would, of course, like to express my gratitude to the Research Society for the Study of Diabetes here, was more commonly referred to as RSSDI, for their immense contribution for nearly half a worldwide NCD pandemic affects nearly half a billion. As the largest organization of diabetes care professionals and researchers in Asia, with over 10,000 members, making a tremendous impact in India's battle against metabolic disease, which is one of the leading causes of morbidity, loss of quality. December 2000, India had more than 77 million patients with diabetes, according to IDF. India, I understand, is also home to one of the largest populations of children living with type 1 diabetes, also known as juvenile diabetes. So I really believe that India is a country that bears a huge burden of diabetes, and therefore there is an urgent task to address this metabolic disorder in the manner we all can collectively. So let me start with addressing India's unmet need for an indigenous. So let me share with you that when Biocon started its development program in the year 2000, we were acutely aware of the huge burden of diabetes. And it was also very evident to me as an entrepreneur that whilst we were at the epicenter of this non-communicable disease, we also had a huge challenge of providing insulins, which was such an important therapy for such patients here, only because of affordability. I really felt as an entrepreneur that if I were to focus my efforts searching an affordable insulin, I'm sure we could actually address accessibility. And it was in line with this particular vision that we embarked on this journey of developing our own indigenous. We were wondering how to do it, and one of the big decisions at the time was to leverage our proprietary Pikia yeast platform technology that develop a number of enzymes, see whether we could leverage this very efficient technology insulin. And fortunately, very successful, and we were actually able to develop our own proprietary technology, dominant human insulin was analogs before that. And it's very interesting for me to mention this because at that time, if you remember, Novo Nordisk manufactured recombinant insulin, Saccharomyces technology, proprietary to Lilly, which was the next big company to manufacture recombinant Coli technology. We became a third company, its own proprietary on a urea yeast platform. So it makes us very distinct even today because we are not just merely a copycat company, we are a proprietary company right out of India. So we as a team were of course extremely proud to have developed India's first intensely developed recombinant insulin. And it was a proud moment for us to get this approved. And I can tell you that it also coincided with the year went public through an IPO, successful IPO. And what was most important that we launched our price point. We had a series of development. International insulin makers immediately lowered their price in India. And the government gained the confidence to bring RH insulin under price control as it finally had a domestic alternative. Our product benefited a large pool of diabetes patients directly as well as indirectly. With the advent of modern insulin analogs in India, we introduced our long-acting glargine Bisalov 2009, thus expanding the pool of available quality. Simultaneously, also embarked on the global development program for the product, as our mission was to provide affordable access around the world. Since then, our insulin's journey has been driven by our aspiration to provide 1 in 5 insulin-dependent people our biosimilar. In 2016, our biosimilar insulin glargine, the first biosimilar from India, approved and launched in Japan. As you know, PMDA is an regulatory body. Again, it was a moment of great pride for us as a company out of India to get acceptance for our product, the biosimilar glargine, in Japan. And through our insulins portfolio, we are serving patients in many emerging and developed economies. As you just heard from Viraj, the most recent achievement we have had, world's first interchangeable biosimilar by the USF. Our insulin glargine Semglee was launched in the US by our partner, Viatris, now also first interchangeable biosimilar under the 51K regulatory. As the name suggests, our biosimilar and interchangeable with Sanofi Lantus reference product. And of course, as you just heard, it also buys us a 12-month exclusivity as the first glargine. So this is something which I think is a matter of pride for Biocon. Our product has also recently been listed in the national formularies of pharmacy managers in the US, Express Scripts and Prime Therapeutics, in which not only the preferred product on their formulary, but it also replaces Lantus in the formulary. And this actually again tells you about the confidence that pharmacy benefit managers have in our product, able to prescribe very important insulin analog their members. In fact, between these two pharmacy benefit managers, They have over 6 million members. I'm sure a large part of them would also be diabetics. Interchangeable designation in the US, of course, not only something that gives confidence to uh, PMs, but of course, tribals, patients are also going to be huge beneficiaries. We believe that the adoption of biosimilars through PMs will drive down the high cost biologics therapy for chronic disease like diabetes. You also heard recently there's been a huge debate about price gouging that many of the companies are indulging in, and which is of great concern to country, to the policymakers, to the healthcare, departments, government, and as you just heard from Viraj's presentation, Janet Woodcock, the acting commissioner of US FDA, also basically alluded to going to be extremely important for good competitive practices that benefit and the healthcare system. US as we are already benefiting of people with diabetes, many emerging and developed markets, food access. We have already supplied 2.75 billion doses of recombinant human insulin since launch in India, 2004. And you will be pleased to know that we're actually developing the US market as well. Because we believe that although for a long time it felt that it was not a product that we focus on, very apparent that recombinant then product that has for affordable access in a country like US. Therefore, we believe that we should go through all the regulatory requirements, bring this product to the US. Our rapid-acting analog biosimilar insulin aspart is also something we're seeking US FDA approval for, and I'm pleased to share with you that we have received regulatory approvals in markets like EU and Canada, and of course in many emerging markets. I also want to emphasize the fact that we have built global scale manufacturing capacity in India and Malaysia and have emerged as the third largest insulin manufacturing globally. It's of course a matter of great pride for the country and all of us at Biocon. As you can see from this particular slide, rank right up there with all the major manufacturers in the world in terms of biologics capacity. We were up there with all the major companies, of course all the other biologic companies, and of course you can see that we're the only company out of India in this list. So I think this is something which I want you to understand has happened because of focused investment building capacity and building global capacity. It has taken us many years. Investment, I can tell you, being capital intensive, have date invested almost $1 billion building the various biologic capacities here. So now let me turn to busting. I've busted myths as a woman entrepreneur for many decades, and now I thought it was time for us to bust certain myths that have been created about products from here, both in terms of quality and reliability. My message, all of you at RSSDI, that we have to bust this myth that companies are not capable of producing world-class biologics. Biocon has proved that time and time again. And I want to prove it again. The myth that imported insulins are better than insulins developed in India needs. This mindset, however, unfortunately prevails the minds of many, many prescribers and patients as a result. Yeah, and this must, and we seek your help to bust this. Healthcare professionals in India have in the past had a psychological bias prescribing an innovator drug instead of the generic or a biosimilar version because patients actually believe that the originator drug is superior in quality to the drug and very often demand for the originator. The prescribers are very happy to prescribe. But I really hope that as prescribers and health that you can help us bust. We have had to bust the myth of the superiority of biologics manufactured in the West compared to those manufactured in India. By getting this interchangeable equal for our biosimilar largely USFDA, I want you to know that just as your help in busting imported products are better than indigenous products, I've had to battle the same problem US and European countries that better to get a biosimilar made in Korea or US compared to buying a biosimilar. This is something which is very unfair. Bias is very, very. We have systematically tried to overcome this particular hurdle. I can tell you that many of the originator companies' CEOs have very unfairly and unkindly that, well, let's see if there's any Indian company that can actually quality biosimilar, have our doubts. And we proved them wrong. So I want you to know why we are so proud at Biocon Biologics, only company here that has developed so many biosimilars that have been the US FDA and by European agencies. And not only approved, but the first the world US FDA approval for biosimilar trastuzumab or Herceptin, with the first in the world from US FDA for biosimilar pegfilgrastim, and of course, first in the world to get interchangeable label approval for insulin gene USF. We have busted that myth. I want you to help us bust biosimilar. We have responded all these various skeptical kind of like various quarters data, clinical data that, as you just heard, establish comparable safety, comparable. I think we have silenced our skeptics, but we want to silence them. Today, the biggest testimony to the quality of our product, the fact that two of the biggest pharmacy benefit managers have replaced the innovator Antus. This testimony, evidence they have for quality and reliability. I think this is the shape of. As a country, I want to now talk about Bharat. We talk about Atmanirbhar Bharat, but not confident that we have great made products, especially in the healthcare. We continue to believe that imported products are better than indigenous, and we are trying to change that mind. You can see that in the case of the COVID pandemic, it was our indigenous vaccine that allowed us to vaccinate. It was a matter of great pride for me to celebrate the birth that was 21st of August. And we were able to do that because we had capacity and capability to produce vaccines at scale, produce quality. We actually silenced the world when it. And today the world respects us in terms of a vaccine. I think we need to do the same when it comes to insulin. Globals is on the global. The world needs insulin. Just, I just mentioned what Soumya Swaminathan talked in terms of, you know, insulin inequity. That's what we can. I know that apart from Biocon, there are a few also produced. And collectively, we must show to the world we are a country that will equity, vaccine, equity. That is what. And we must prove to the world that we are self-reliant. I'm very proud of the fact that had we not been reliant in terms of insulin, believe me, even insulins would have been in short supply in India during the pandemic, and that would have been faster. Because of our capability and capacity of producing insulins, I think that problem. I also hear today that a post-COVID fallout is that a large number of started developing. That's going to also add diabetes and the need for insulin. So please join us in this mission of Atmanirbhar Bharat in terms of insulins by switching imported insulin. Now I come to insulins for young people. I'm absolutely delighted to learn this event that, which 14th of November also marks Children's Day, as you know, it's just that it's Children's Day and World Diabetes Day. And I'm absolutely delighted to partner RSSCI launching a care program called Bridge 1, Young Type 1 Diabetes. We are absolutely proud and privileged to partner you. Very, very. India has the maximum number of children with type 1 diabetes globally, as per the IDF Diabetes Atlas 2000, which put the number, I understand, over 1. So India leads the tally of type 1 diabetes, followed by US and. So I do believe that this is something we have to address. I understand there were nearly 6,000 new cases of type 1 diabetes in 2000. This number is only. So it is a privilege, commitment, Biocon Biologics partner with RSSI. Very, very important. Have to make a difference. Patient must make sure that insulin therapy is not denied to any of these. So in order to address the issue of type 1 diabetes management in a holistic manner, I understand that 400 physicians have been identified to help people with type 1 diabetes, and we will enable these healthcare providers with supply of our insulin. Treat over 1,000 children from the marginalized community, and we will keep obviously expanding that of health. I would like to thank the RSSI for working with and also developing specific training material to train these identified physicians who will further engage with the neighbors and the community at large in the district to enable better type 1 diabetes. We will continue to support the initiative with educational and other diabetes awareness for the training programs and on-ground facilities for these programs. As the world celebrates the 100th anniversary of the discovery of insulin, therapy that has transformed type 1 diabetes from a once fatal diagnosis into a chronic manageable condition, Biocon Biologics has expanded its universal access program to include children with type 1 diabetes, marginalized communities. We want to make a difference to young people who are going to need very, very good, very reliable insulin as they grow and lead normal life. Biocon Biologics has developed a comprehensive and world-class portfolio of medicines which are safe and effective for both adults and children. And in order to ensure greater compliance and patient ease, our insulin portfolio includes multiple presentations in the forms of vials, pills, pens, and disposable. I am glad to share with you that we have succeeded in serving over 1 million people with diabetes in our country thus far. And through special initiatives like this RSSDI, we aim to expand universal access to people who need it the most, including vulnerable, unfortunately, type 1. So, in conclusion, I would like to say that we commemorate the centenary of the discovery of insulin. As we commemorate this centenary of discovery of insulin, we must look at it as an opportunity for change, not only with diabetes in India, but also the almost 500 million people living with diabetes in the world, and millions more who are at risk around the world. I therefore request you all to join us in our mission, providing equitable access to world-class people with diabetes across the world and of course in our country. Thank you so much, and let's start working together.
Kiranji, I think we as Indians are proud of the great achievements of you for the last 1.5 decades. Extremely happy to launch this day. The man behind this activity from RSSD, Dr. Bansi Sabu, formally thank you to be a part of this.
First of all, thank Kiranji for becoming part of this talk. We are thankful for our project launch one. As you were saying that we Indians support more Indian. We are proud of all Indian biological companies who are producing vaccine or any other drug which is. RSSDI is committed for type 1 diabetes care. We are doing our level base since last 20 years. Your association with RSSDI support more than 1,000 children across the country, from all the district coordinators, to the ruralmost part of our country. As this year, our theme is access to diabetes. This will improve access to the insulin for needy type 1 children. Not only for needy type 1 children, your insulin will be available to the ruralmost part of our country, and even insulin for those all diabetic patients. Once again, I congratulate Biocon and Kiranji for this wonderful initiative you have taken along with RSSDI. I am also thankful to all our RSSDI members, including our President Dr. Vasant Kumar, Secretary and President-elect Makkar, for this wonderful of RSSDI. Thank you.